Hi, guys. Welcome to the Creative Block. Today, I'm very excited. We get a chance to hear a little bit about Layla Anderson. Layla is a strategist, founder, and leadership consultant committed to advancing equity and impact across sectors. She owns People Partner Solutions, a consulting firm helping mission driven organizations strengthen culture, engagement, and systems for growth. As executive director of Golden Link Inc., she fosters community and mentorship for women of color. With a background in IO psychology and a track record spanning nonprofits, startups, and research, Layla brings insight into organizational design and transformation. She is also co-founder of Streamcore Labs and a USC alumna. Layla is recognized for values-driven leadership through programs like the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center's Milestone Circles. Layla, thank you so much for making the time today. I'm really excited that you're here today and excited to learn more.
Thank you so much for having me, Vince. I'm a big fan.
Oh, I'm flattered. I'm flattered. We met, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something. There was a conference here at USC, and I met you and your partner, and we were talking, and have connected ever since. I was inspired to reach out to you because I was watching some of your LinkedIn articles come out, and you were rightfully so addressing a lot of things about culture, and I was like, oh, this is perfect because the landscape is changing quickly, and so there's a lot to talk about. But before we dive in, tell me a little bit about your background and why you're attracted to this space in the first place.
So, my background is in psychology, and I began my career actually as a social worker and in South Central LA. And I
Oh,
found
wow.
that, yeah, even though I was doing great, really impactful work, the organizational system was designed in such a way that I couldn't be as impactful as I wanted to be. And there was all of this kind of distance between employees and leadership. And that's when I decided to, instead of getting my master's in clinical psychology, to go into the IO realm and learn more about organizational design, employee engagement, and just try to make the places where people spend the majority of their time, which is work, more enjoyable and more fulfilling.
More enjoyable, more fulfilling. Wow. What a concept.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about a little bit about innovations and trends, technology. You have a educated voice on, human psychology. Where do you recently? Where do you see shifts happening around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, one of the shifts that I'm really excited about is this kind of democratization of technology, right? So, there's so many more voices now in this tech space, and even non technical people are building products in the technical realm. I mean, that's what my co founders and I are doing at Streamcore. I come from IO psychology, Spanish language and cultural interactions, and human behavior. And my other co founders come from the entertainment realm. And we've come together to really understand a clear problem and address that problem using the tools available to us. And I think that's the biggest trend that I'm really excited about, is to not just kind of dive into a technology because it's popular, but because it solves a particular use case and a problem that we as humans are seeing in our everyday lives. When I work with my clients in consulting, I'm always trying to find out which tool is going to increase their impact, right? What's going to increase our speed? I mean, just as we were starting this conversation, we were talking about the platform that we're recording on, right?
Yeah,
I'm very accustomed to using StreamYard, for example. It's a
right.
beautiful, fantastic product. I came on and I was excited. I said, why do you use this one? Why do we use
Yeah.
Riverside? And you were telling me about, the ways that you're intentionally using and recording and how this is serving your purpose. So even on small things like, where are we recording? Which email service do you prefer? Which AI product or chatbot do you prefer? Do you like ChatGPT's interface? Do you prefer Perplexity? I think it really, for me, I think deeply about the humans using the tool and what they're going to use that for, and how we can apply them to be more supportive of how they work and how they move through daily life.
It's funny because with StreamYard, when I started this whole thing in the beginning, post COVID, I was a little intimidated because it was such a gamer type environment. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And when these guys came along, the Riverside.fm, they're not at this point paying me. I'm not plugging them, but the ease of use for what I wanted to do, to your point, for what my expectation was really pretty seamless, so,
Absolutely.
and that's how I made that choice. I know that StreamYard is very intuitive. It has a lot of great tools. It's a very popular product.
Right, but if it doesn't, meet your specific needs, it's a no-go. And I think that that's really where we should be going with technology, is less towards, and no shade to software engineers, we love them. They have brought us to this point in the world where we are. But these are smart people who love to communicate with computers, who are trying
Yeah.
different fun ways of communicating with computers. A lot of times they have very little basis in what problems everyday people need to be solved, right? And so
Right.
I'm, as a psychologist, definitely coming from the other side of it and
Hmm.
seeing what problems do we need to solve in our workplace. Like, what is my consultant workflow? Which tools are going to help me, quickly synthesize what my client is dealing with, find the applicable models and research for their issue, and very quickly, create beautiful proposals and summaries and charts, and then get that back to them in a way that they can quickly scan and understand. That's my workflow, right? That might be different than an artist's workflow, or a teacher, for example. So just thinking about who are the humans we're thinking about, how are they working and living, and how can we create tools that are actually going to serve their needs. So I mainly work again with nonprofits, so that can be traditional nonprofits, government teams, and I've also moved into working with tech startups as well, for groups of teams that have kind of a mission-driven or equity-based solution. Those are the organizations that I like to work with because, from my perspective, it's the easiest to do engagement work.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
align around a mission, a vision, and our core values, and then we operationalize our work to meet those goals. And for me, that's just it just makes sense to do it that
Hmm.
way. I don't really operate in another way, so those are the types of companies that I like to work with.
That's amazing. And let's talk a little bit about age gaps. Like, there's certain groups of people, that this is not just different, it's they're not understanding how any of this is working
Yeah.
or why it's important to them. So it's like sort of this fringe nerd geek thing. So I would imagine your challenge, as you do what you do, is also bridging age differences so that everybody is clear on what's happening.
Absolutely. I think a lot about age gaps. Obviously, all of my clients, we have an age gap. And I like to, I kind of enjoy that intergenerational conversation and a respect for the way that they have experience in their industry and they have the insights into what works well. And then my mind, just the way it works, I like to quickly find, how can we make this faster? How can we make this better? How can we make this easier, more aligned? So for me, I'm always trying to kind of sit in the background and use tools that are going to map out their pattern and shorten some of the steps for them. And there is resistance depending on the tool, right? I definitely don't go in and talk to most of my clients about Web3 because it would turn them off completely. People don't want to go towards what they don't understand. But I think that that's the next big shift, actually, is how we can use this intergenerational knowledge for future design. So, Dr. Ruha Benjamin, she's a sociologist. She talks a lot about this work of,
Hmm.
grandma's perspective. How does grandma use an AI tool, right? If she's a very slow typer, for example, or if she even uses a computer at all. So how do we create more perhaps voice activated AI tools so that she can do her storytelling and we can pull the knowledge from there? Because I think that that's been the biggest thing, is not that there aren't brilliant, creative, interesting voices across the map. It's just that only a particular few have been open to it. or have had the access to it, especially when it comes to Web3. I think they have this very crypto bro
Yeah.
perspective, which I think is really unfair because a lot of that technology could be very, very useful to different groups of people.
As you were talking, I was thinking about how AI really might usher in everybody's acceptance to a lot of these things that we think is fringe. And I even think about like mental health. I think
Mhm.
about the challenges of people, managing elder care or people that are severely schizophrenic and things like that. If you have this voice assistant who doesn't get tired, who doesn't get frustrated, who has all the patience in the world, you could imagine,
Yeah.
there's a lot of new techniques in dealing with things like this that aren't a matter of lack of information, but really just how do we do it with the resources we have.
I think that's actually really a brilliant use case. Thinking about, yeah, perhaps severe schizophrenia, maybe personality disorders, which are extremely pervasive. They're unlikely to, be quote unquote resolved or fixed. They're likely to be pervasive throughout the life. So, like you said, having a tool that does have that more patience, I think is actually a really great use case. That's
Yeah, yeah. I think there could be so much potential there because,
really,
everybody who works in those environments are, really angels because it's an impossible job, you know what I mean? And it's not everybody can do it. And, uh,
I'm
uh,
excited. I'm really excited for AI companies to take a lot more responsibility over privacy and security so that we can actually responsibly use these tools in the settings like we're talking about. I mean,
yeah,
healthcare and AI, this is a conversation I feel like we've been having for a decade. It probably hasn't been that long, but it feels like
right.
when is AI going to improve the healthcare system that we know has so many roadblocks? And I think, them just kind of really leaning into these security protocols is going to help a lot of people because right now it's just simply not safe. And as well as we keep seeing examples in the news about, concerning like headlines about AI tools that are convincing people to do concerning behaviors.
Right.
And I think that's because, the best comparison I've heard in a few years is that AI is kind of like a dog that wants to please you, right? Wants to make you happy. It wants to give you the response that is going to fulfill your desire. And that's not what you look for in a healthcare professional, right? Maybe sometimes a friend, but
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
you
Yeah,
need a tool that is going to hold you accountable, even if it's saying it over and over and over. If working on
yeah,
boundaries is something you need to work on, or
yeah.
things like that, it should be helping you and not kind of leaning into the behaviors that you enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Otherwise, you end up with a very expensive drinking buddy.
Right, exactly, exactly. We already have those. We don't need
Yes, we already have
we
those.
don't need to
Uh,
spend trillions
so
on.
tell me about some of the projects you're currently working on, if you could divulge.
Yeah, I'd love to. So right now, I just graduated from the NASDAQ Center's Milestone Circle, where I worked for 12 weeks on designing my first course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm designing a course to help professionals lead intentionally through change. It's called Build Better, and it's a four-part series on intentional communication, leadership styles, organizational design, and decision making.
Wow,
And
that's
I'm
incredible.
I'm really, really excited about that.
Yeah.
It's and so that's one thing. And then I'm also obviously working as a consultant, guiding orgs with integrating their ethics and their social impact goals with their operational models and their future state goals as well. So, how are we really going to achieve this mission? Who is it going to take? How much time is it going to take? And let's kind of get into those nitty gritty details to make sure that all of this good work actually comes to fruition.
Amazing. Ethics, right? I mean, you could spend an entire career just on that one word.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of that word. I see a lot of people leaning away and saying,
Yeah,
I'm not the expert on ethics. I don't think I should say what's ethical. And
yeah,
I think I'm going to plant my flag and say I feel comfortable saying what's ethical and not for the most part in many
yeah,
settings. I don't mind leaning into that. And honestly, this diversity of thought is the superpower. And, in this modern world, we're really seeing the shift in workplaces and in how these technologies are going to be built in the future. It's not this traditional top down, one person saying, I'm the arbiter of what's right here. It really needs to be and is giving way to these kind of networked collaborative models. And you have a bunch of different people with different expertise coming together with their different skills and mindsets to solve a challenge that doesn't have an obvious answer. And when we're solving these challenges with no obvious answer and we're building these technologies that no one's ever seen before, we do need to stick to some sort of ethical guideline or some scaffolding, some framework of where we do want to go and where we don't want to go. Because I think people who are in business know you have to make tough decisions throughout the life cycle of your organization. And if you don't have that guiding light, it's very easy to fall into a dark place.
For sure. And it's also pretty rough too, because there's many times no finish lines to a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So, all of this work but the goalpost keeps changing. And so embracing this idea is probably pretty healthy because it's an evolution. It's we're all running these marathons, right?
I like that. I like that perspective. It's true. We're starting to solve problems that I don't know if there's a clear answer to them. So that's a really good point.
Where are you seeing kind of friction points?
I think one of the biggest challenges that continues to frustrate leaders across sectors is hiring. That's one of the biggest things, is finding the right talent, attracting the right talent, selecting the right talent, and keeping them. And then also, how do you continue their growth throughout their time in the organization? So hiring is a big one. I work a lot, again, with nonprofits. That's my background. So a major friction point and a challenge that we always have to manage is the difference of perspective, expertise, and opinion of our staff versus our board members. And you have the executive team kind of sitting in the center, making the decisions and being the face of the organization, but having these kind of competing expectations on either side of them. So I think that's a challenge that continues to require some support and some massaging. And yeah, I think those are the two main things.
And is that a constant reiteration of North Star so that everybody's on the same page? Because you get groups, like if you get legal together, they see the world through the lens of legal.
Yeah.
If you get people that are getting donations, they see it through their lens. You know what I mean? So I can imagine you get these different camps that are feel agency about what to do, but is it serving the main thing that org is trying to do?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm working on a staff and board retreat right now, and that's the main concern is, okay, we have this mission, it's stated, but we also have this changing landscape as far as social climate and political climate. Grants are changing, funding is changing, expectations are changing. And so while our goal is kind of the same, our mission remains the same, our goals have to shift. Because, right, you're saying we have our bankers, we have our donors, we have our legal and finance teams, and then we have the staff who are working every day with people in the community. And these two groups are seeing different challenges. And I don't think any one is more valuable than the other. And so that's the difficult part of taking all of these equally valuable perspectives and bringing them into a room together to collaborate. And again, coming back to this new framework, which some people aren't accustomed to, which is we're going to be a group of smart people all working together. There's no right answer here. We all have the institutional knowledge, and my job as the consultant is to kind of reflect back to you the best ideas that I'm hearing. I'm hearing some alignment here, I'm hearing friction here. What's the best way that we're going to go about solving this based off of what we all know? And I think, yeah, that's something that continues to be a challenge.
I think what I've seen, being part of major organizations throughout my career is sometimes the people that are in the trenches and the front lines are confused by decisions that come from the top
Yeah.
that almost seem counterintuitive,
Yes.
and it's demoralizing.
Yes.
Sometimes, it's like, well, why are we were doing this and now you're pulling but the truth is that because there's not communication, or because sometimes the top doesn't feel the need to communicate the why, it just sort of rolls ahead and has an effect on morale. I don't know if you've seen anything like that before.
You're completely spot on. I mean, communication is the biggest creator or breaker of trust, in my opinion. Not communicating with enough time for people to really kind of accept this new perspective, preparing people for change, helping them to feel heard, even if you're not going to move forward with their idea, just noting that their perspective is valuable or valid. I think these are ways that organizations can better prepare their staff for change, and I think it's often not happening. Like you're saying, somebody's kind of, nobody really knows where the decision came from, but this is the decision and we all have to implement it. We don't really know how we're going to implement it, but it's our job to figure it out all of a sudden. So I think, just a little bit more preparation, communication, accountability going both ways goes a long, long way. Well, they've been saying for about, I think, 5 years now, they've been saying the biggest leadership skill that's important is EQ. So emotional intelligence. I think moving forward, it's really going to be, do you have an ability to connect with and influence people? Do they trust you? Do they trust the decisions that you make? And I think that that's going to be, kind of the leaders of the future are people that can convince both human and robot to get on board with the initiative and move forward. And you do have to have confidence. And I think that confidence comes from one, knowing what you're doing, two, knowing that you have built that trust with your team, that you have the skills to communicate effectively. I think just having the skills to communicate can make you much more confident as a leader. So maybe honing in on a few of those things.
Well, I love that you said that, because this is a big part of why I wanted to have this conversation today, because I saw this mentioned in one of your LinkedIn articles, which was emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's dive into that a little bit, because it is one of those things that I also strive for in creative or professional worlds. Let's talk about what it is and how it can be leveraged in our lives.
Yeah. Emotional intelligence. It's kind of seen as the other side, the mirror other side of IQ, right? Traditional intelligence. And it's all of the other quote unquote soft skills that make you a skilled individual leader, staff member, right? So it is, again, communication style. It's the ability to listen actively. It's the ability to influence other people. I think having these skills have traditionally been seen as a nice to have, and they're quickly becoming a must have for not just leaders, but also skilled team members. If we're working on a team of 5 in a matrix system, we need to know that everybody on the team is going to have some compassion, have some patience, and know that that email wasn't intended with any malice. It just was written quickly, right? So can we take the moment to calm ourselves when we begin to assume, and when we get a little bit frustrated? Can we begin to work on these other parts of our identity that don't just have to do with like what we know? And this is quickly becoming a must-have for top talent.
In technology, as we're making advancements here, that it's more inclusive to gender and race and financial status and all that, and not just the sort of select Silicon Valley groups and a few early adopters?
I love that question. That's something I think about really frequently, which is we have to get more people in the room developing with these tools, right? So that includes non-technical people who want to solve real human problems throughout the world, making sure that the tools available to us are available in many languages, for example. I've only ever tried to use ChatGPT in English. I've never compared it if I prompt in Spanish or in Korean. So, testing these different models and ensuring that they're working across the board. I've also heard Dr. Ruha Benjamin recommend potentially having, she's a sociologist who cares a lot about democratizing technology. And she talks about, using voice activated AI tools to ensure that different generations can be a part of this technical conversation. I think we know, there's actually many people in the United States who aren't exactly literate. And so chatting is not the best, way for them to interact with the new technology. So how can we make sure that voice recognition is more inclusive so that they can use these tools as well in many languages and in many cultures? That's something I'm very interested in solving for. And again, I think that's because I have this perspective of a non-technical person. I'm just an applied scientist. I'm just a psychologist. Like, I just know people and care about people. And I think coming from that perspective of wanting to solve for human issues is how we'll get this technology out to many, many more people.
That's incredible. And also early education, right? Because,
Yes.
if you have people that are younger that don't even imagine that they could use these tools to sort of fold into their lives or help them solve problems, then you're going to have this time where there's this catch up always.
That's such a good point. And I was talking to a nonprofit founder here in the Bay Area, and she helps with early education for students. And she told me a very disturbing statistic or fact, which was that, we really believed that young children and babies who could use smartphones and iPads from a young age would be tech native. And what she's finding and trying to teach, 8, 9, 10-year-olds robotics is that they actually have little skill and little interest in anything outside of a smartphone or an iPad.
Wow.
So even, opening up and turning on a computer is foreign to them. And
Wow.
these skills actually aren't transferring. So I think what you're saying is actually very key. How do we get young people exposed to different types of technologies and also curious? We don't want to lose curiosity in young people from diverse backgrounds because they have just as much innovation and knowledge as anyone else. And we want to see the problems that they want to solve for. We want to see the tech solutions that they're coming out with. So early education is huge, access to tools to build with. And I would say also, just when it comes to innovation, I think America is getting a little bit surprised right now because we're looking at the global landscape and we're seeing cheaper technologies coming out of China and also out of Africa. So there's a lot of places where they're doing a lot with less, a lot less money, and a lot more ingenuity. And I think continuing to put early education in diverse places is how we will get these tools that don't cost trillions of dollars to build. We can actually build things on the ground. So 100% education.
I love that. And, I also think about kids come from households and there's a culture in a household. And if the parents don't care or don't have the bandwidth to also have that conversation, there's not a lot of motivation there.
Absolutely.
Education systems are sometimes broken.
Yeah.
And so even because there's information that's available, to get classes made and put into a system is a big bureaucratic nightmare. I'm thinking out loud about all these potential gaps that younger people are having. Some of them will have a fire in their belly and learn it on their own, but not everybody learns that way, so there's a whole ocean of kids that are at risk of sort of being passed over.
I think you're spot on with that, with the need and also with the challenge. I mean, you're an educator, so, we talked about this a lot in undergrad. I think it's been proven that your ability to engage well with the world comes from that early integration that parents have in the household. So it's learning to read before you get to school.
Yeah.
Doing some storytelling at home. It's doing having conversations so your vocabulary begins to expand. Asking questions at the dinner table, right, rather than just kind of commanding and giving kids this sort of inductive.
Marching orders.
Right, exactly, because we want to inspire deductive reasoning and expansive thought and all of these things. And it really starts in the household. And as you pointed out, some parents are exhausted. Some parents are overwhelmed. Some parents don't know. And so it does take educating the families as well. And, where do they get the time? That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation because
Yeah.
for some families that's a luxury. You know what I
Right.
mean? If both parents are spread thin, or if there's one parent, you know what I mean? These kinds of conversations are gonna not happen.
Exactly. And, we say that this is the hope for AI, and I would love to see a world in which this is safe and this is applicable to have, individualized education for students around the world with, some kind of tool that's integrated with AI that meets them where they are. It begins to have
Yeah.
conversations with them when they're young to understand what they're interested in, what their skills are, right? Because that could be a low lift intervention to help many different students. My partner and I actually talk a lot about this future world in which it's not about how old you are, but at what level you are, right? So I've always loved to read from a young age, so that's a skill that I built from the time I was young. But mathematics is not my strong suit, so I might be in a math class with a very young student, a very old student, because
Yeah.
we're all trying to learn this same concept, and it's
Yeah.
becoming the concept that you want to learn more than it is your age or your language or your neighborhood. And I would love to see a world in which that is the case.
And the strength of the educators, right? I mean, you firsthand probably have many inspiring moments based on who was bringing you that information
Yeah.
in those classes. I mean, you know it when there's not a good teacher. Like
Yes.
you feel that, right? But when the opposite is true, it's not just you understanding, it's beyond, it's motivation, it's inspiration.
Absolutely. My love of economics came from my high school teacher who was just fantastic. And I think he truly could have been teaching any subject,
Yeah.
and it would have been my favorite subject because, like you're saying, the approach that you bring to it, the energy, the care, it makes all the difference. Educators make all the difference.
Yeah.
But that goes back to our EQ conversation, because it's not just about what the educator knows. I mean, that's a huge part, obviously, having
Sure.
somebody who knows what they're talking about. But it's really that interaction and that connection that the educator's having with the student that is the life-changing thing. That is what changes lives, is the human connection.
The human connection. Well said.
Thanks. I think it takes us really talking about these things, bringing that awareness that, hey, how are we communicating with others around us? Why should we even care about whether people receive our message well or not? What's the impact of not being truly heard and not hearing? And then you obviously getting in the trenches and doing it and seeing the difference between one student and another and how they're receiving a message or how they're giving a message. So, I think obviously the practical and also just research and thinking and writing about all of these topics are how we're all going to grow.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm excited to share this conversation on my platform because I think it's critically important, you know what I mean? Especially now. But and so tell me what's happening now? Is there anything on the horizon that you're working on or looking forward to?
There's a lot of things. There's some potential changes coming up for me, but we'll see. We'll leave that to see
Fair,
what's
fair.
to come. We are working on Streamcore, my first tech company that I'm on the inside of, and I'm very excited about this product when we talk about ethics, transparency, different stakeholders from long-term industry executives to creators making music out of their bedroom around the world. How do we kind of bring the needs of all of these stakeholders and manage them using the technology available to us, which is blockchain, AI, data systems, and combining these tools to actually work with people who are, doing great creative work every single day. I'm excited about this challenge because I feel like it's right in my wheelhouse, and it's also something completely new, and I love a challenge. So.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I wish you the very, very best of luck. If people want to follow your writing or what you're doing or any of your companies, where can they follow you?
Yeah, so I do need to start making some blogs, I think, but right now I'm mainly on LinkedIn. You can find me at Layla
Yes,
Anderson.
good content on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'll keep posting, keep bringing things out on LinkedIn. That's the best place to follow me for now. But if you're looking for any consulting work, you can go to peoplepartner.us.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for making the time. This was this is an awesome conversation. I
Thank,
really loved it. I love your perspective, and I wish you the very, very best.
thank you so much. I'm glad you find my writings valuable, and I'm
Absolutely.
grateful for the platform. Thanks.
Oh, yeah.